And welcome to the Referendum Scotland Bill Committee, our 7th meeting. Can we just check everyone's mobile phones are switched off first of all? And can we just bash straight on to item 1? Are we ready to go? Item 1 obviously concerns the timetable for the committee's scrutiny of the paving bill and the main referendum bill. It also just suggests early evidence-taking sessions could be undertaken in advance of the introduction of these bills. 3 things we've been asked to look at. Whether we write to the Deputy First Minister seeking more detail on the paving bill and the main referendum bill itself, including any indicative timescales. Secondly, whether we should take stage 1 evidence during January and early February as a preliminary stage to the stage 1 scrutiny processes for both bills, and if so, if we're content with the themes laid out in paragraph 13. So perhaps just deal with it in that order, if that's okay, and whether we should write to the DFM or not. James?
Thanks a lot, Convener. Just looking at the Clerk's note, I note that the Scottish Government press release in terms of the paving bill for 16 and 17-year-olds being included in the franchise notes that it would be an accelerated timetable for that. In addition to that, the referendum bill itself, the note says that it would be a demanding timescale to get that passed for October. I think, therefore, it is urgent that we write to the Deputy First Minister seeking clarification on the timescales that the Government intends to publish for this, and also some more information on what is going to be included in these bills. And I think we really need that as a precursor in order to assess a way forward and as to whether we can take early evidence sessions.
Stuart.
Thank you, Convener. Actually, I agree with much of what James said there, but obviously there has been quite a bit of information in the media, certainly in recent weeks, as well as in the likes of the press release. So I think it is imperative on this committee to write to the Deputy First Minister, certainly seeking some confirmation about exactly what the government actually are looking at in terms of kind of the way forward. Also, particularly with the press release that James mentioned there, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure we get as much information as possible.
Yeah, and obviously, I think that's right. Has anybody else got anything to add to that, Linda?
I think that's right. I think certainly we should write to the Deputy First Minister confirming all these things. But I don't think there would be anything to stop us in tandem very, very quickly taking an evidence session from an electoral registration officer, someone from the management board, just to talk through the very basics of how these things work.
Let me come back to that just in a minute, just so we agree that we're first of all writing to the Deputy First Minister to seek confirmation of what the actual timescales are, and obviously she'll want to tell us about, I assume, about the Section 30 order, how that plays into the timescales of the legislation and the impact and timing of everything that's required after that. And I assume also there will be issues, as Linda began to, I think, consider, that there will be issues of when people can become on the electoral roll in time for the 2014. And it would be useful to hear some of that stuff from the DFM as well, I think. Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, to follow up, I don't think that necessarily, you have to wait for one before you do the other. I think the two can almost run in tandem.
Let's go into that discussion now. We agree right to DFM.
Yeah.
It's now about the timing of whether we take evidence or not. Stuart.
No, the only point I was making is I think some of the evidence can be taken, very early. I don't think we need to wait for the response in a letter. Although I assume the response to that will be reasonably quick. I think we should still go ahead and talk to or line up witnesses from Electoral Management Board and EROs, etc., to try and get us started, because I think that's about practicalities that, frankly, they would be able to give us evidence on fairly early.
So, I'll cut across you. I do apologise, and I'll come to Patrick and then Patricia. Sorry, Linda.
Oh, sorry. No, I would really. I would like the very first session that we have very early on really to be an information session about how these things work, because I'm aware that we talk very much about how electoral registration and all the rest of it, but I would quite like somebody from the coalface to sit in front of me and tell me the steps they go through, the stages they go through, and how it works, and then we can look at everything else in context.
Patrick.
Yeah, I'd support that, and you know, in a sense, that's about our kind of readiness, our state of readiness, if you like, to receive the legislation when it's introduced. It does seem to me, as well as the technical or the procedural aspects, that we know, not just from the media but from statements in Parliament that ministers have made, what the purpose of the paving bill is going to be, what the policy objective of it is. And it does seem to me that we could take evidence on there'll be people who want to give us evidence on the basic principle of votes at 16, and I don't see why we need to wait before we take evidence on that aspect.
Yeah, really it's going back to the timetable issue, and I very much support the idea of writing to the Deputy First Minister for clarification on that and for some more information about the government's proposals, because I do take the point that we are being asked apparently, or we are going to be invited apparently, to accelerate the process for the paving bill, but also to work to what might be a very demanding timetable according to the paper we've been given by the clerks in connection with the second part of our work. And I think it would be very helpful in tandem with writing to the Deputy First Minister if the clerks could prepare for us an indicative timetable laying out the kind of time frame that the committee would normally work to were these demands not being made of us, so that we have a better idea about the kind of programme that we're being asked to put in place in its stead, and whether or not we can actually accommodate that in its entirety. But I think in terms of the evidence-taking sessions, I fully accept James's point that it would be helpful to have more idea about what the government proposes before we actually begin to take evidence from people. And I have to say, I would think that, I don't want to make assumptions for her, but I would have thought the Deputy First Minister would actually reply to us very quickly on this, and that would allow us, therefore, to begin to take evidence informed by her comments, and to be taking evidence that's entirely appropriate to her comments, because what we don't want to do, if we are being asked, and if we do agree to have some kind of accelerated programme, is to waste time taking evidence that then, it turns out, is not as helpful to us as we perhaps thought in advance it might be.
Stuart.
Thank you. It's a point of clarification. First of all, is it common practice, or has it been common practice in the past, for a bill to be laid before an action by the Privy Council? So obviously with the Section 30 order, that goes to the Privy Council in February. So
it may not be laid in Parliament, but already the government's already published the general thrust of the referendum bill itself in the consultation paper they published last.
Indeed,
so,
yes.
So they can consult on a bill.
Yeah, I mean, that's a consultative bill, but that's not the actual bill proper.
No, but I think Stuart's question was: is it? Well, it's never happened before. As far
never
as
happened. Yes.
On you go.
I think that the situation we're in is pretty much unprecedented because of the particular circumstances of legislation that is dealing with something that Parliament's never dealt with before. And I'm not aware of a situation previously. I don't think there has been a situation previously where a Section 30 order has been required in conjunction with a Scottish Parliament bill. I mean, I think it's been generally recognised now that until the Section 30 order actually becomes law, it won't be possible to introduce this bill. So we have a more or less fixed date for that, and that's the earliest point at which introduction can happen. One of the things that the Deputy First Minister will be able to clarify is how soon after she expects these bills to be introduced. It may not be immediately afterwards, but we would imagine it would be quite soon afterwards.
I mean, that's what I thought the case would be, but I wanted to get some kind of clarification on it, because it's. I think we therefore are really kind of at the mercy of that particular timescale. So we could either, as a committee, not do too much between now and then until the bill comes in, or we actually start to do some work on this. And I think I know in the papers one of the suggestions, certainly regarding the 16 and 17-year-olds, I think they'd be very useful for us. I would suggest to actually try to get some more information on how it actually has worked elsewhere in other jurisdictions where votes for 16 and 17-year-olds do actually take place. I think that would be a very useful thing for us to really to focus on, because I mean, certainly for the paving bill, that's going to be one of the, probably the major plank of the bill. So I think that's if there are areas, which there are, I think it'd be useful for us to actually get some more information on them.
Well,
my interest is in the paving bill, convener, simply because of the tight timescale. And the givens are, we know the Scottish Government's policy objective in the paving bill, so working back from that, I mean, I think we can very usefully as a committee take evidence on a range of issues. We know what the end point is, but I think we should investigate things like what is the preliminary procedure that needs to be put in place to allow 15 and 16-year-olds to end up with a vote by 2014. And of particular interest to me, convener, is does data protection come into this? Because you're obviously finding out information about pretty young individuals. Now, I'm not saying that can't be done, but I think, given we know the policy objective and the date of delivery of that policy objective, can we not, as a committee, start work now, you know, doing that?
that aligns with Stuart and Linda's point about who are the people to do that. They would be the electoral registration officers, the electoral management board, who in practice have got to actually go through that process in terms of...
There's also a data protection issue,
I realise
pure
that,
data protection law,
but,
you know.
Yeah, I realise that, but EROs are already involved in that process because of the 16 and 17-year-old attainer issue, so they'll have experience of that in terms of how 16 and 17-year-olds currently find themselves on the register. Annabelle.
Yes, thanks, convener. Yeah, I mean, just to really reiterate the points made also by Patrick and by Annabelle. I mean, you know, Patricia says that timing is you know, of the utmost, and I absolutely agree. And therefore, you know, let's not sit back and wait. Let's get on. And there's many things that have been suggested that we could usefully start looking at because we know the issues we're going to have to look at anyway. And I think the points have been well made that we just crack on and start lining up witnesses where, you know, we know the kind of issues we're going to have to be focusing on and just get on with things. That would be my view.
Tavish, you want to say anything before we...
No, you've done it to death in my view.
Okay. Linda and Rob.
And just very quickly from me, you know, to on the point that Annabelle's saying, which is very, very valid, it would be good. Well, I think you're both very valid.
I don't know whether to adopt my smiling demeanour or
Annabelle
my cantankerous one.
That's right. What Annabelle Goldie was saying. So, you know, I think the fact that, you know, within Scotland we have had these elections for NHS and stuff. Let's find out whether these issues were looked at then, how they dealt with it. And then on Stuart's point, I noticed that the Isle of Man, Jersey and Guernsey had already done. I presume that their rules are very akin to ours. So perhaps information from them. I don't necessarily mean arranging for people to come in at this point, but very quickly getting in touch with them to ask some of these specific questions would be useful.
Okay, I think we've had a discussion. Unless you want to come back in against
Well, I just was
sorry, Rob.
Since we've done a lot of that discussion, that we get started in the first week in January, that we're back, because we can get information by that time, and it's entirely possible for the clerks, convener, you know, to provide us with the first stages of gathering the kind of information we require. So please, let's get on with it.
Okay, well, I've got the sense here from the majority are saying that we need to do some early preparation work.
I accept that we need to be prepared and well organised, but I think the precursor to that is we need to understand the timetable, we need to understand the accelerated aspect of the timetable, and we then base our programme around that. You know, so I think it is urgent that we get a reply from the Deputy First Minister to inform our work programme going forward.
Okay, well, we could have another discussion. Can I make a suggestion at this stage? Because I'm trying to suss out what people around the table are thinking here. That's why I was trying to see where Tavish was. But given what I've heard from others, whatever happens is we're going to have to be in a situation to be talking to EROs, Election Management Board people about data protection issues. That's going to have to happen at some stage because these are live issues for everyone. And I can see no harm that it would do by having early evidence-taking sessions on these issues, fully expecting that we're going to get a very early response from the DFM. Everything that stops us doing that. And if we've got to have people back at a later date in the process to look at it in a bit more, then so be it. But it might save us some time in the process. Now, I think that's where the majority is. But you know, if we need to go and have a vote on that, we'll do it. But I don't think we need to do that. Okay. Thank you. So I think the three areas then, just so the clerks are clear on what's happening here, is it's 16 and 17-year-olds we're predominantly looking at. we want to get some evidence from perhaps an ERO or a election management board, people who are the practical people on this. Patrick raised the issue of there'll be people who want to talk to us about the policy content of 16 and 17-year-olds. Annabelle raised the issue of the data issues. I think these were the three things that came through in that. And therefore, your second bullet point, effectively, in the paper, it talks about where this has happened before in Scotland, that we can usefully get some people to tell us how that was dealt with in terms of some of these issues that have really been raised and data issues as well. I guess that probably makes bullet point 1 less relevant in the circumstances of the discussion we've had. I've got the sense of that, right? Now, and you agree with that? Okay, and in terms of do we want to talk to the Islemans and Guernseys? We could get written evidence from them, certainly. Video conference if we feel we get something from them in writing that's worthwhile. Okay. Thank you very much. In that case, I think the committee will now move into private session.